For most of their lives, the two brothers were defined by shared loss and shared duty. The trauma of losing their mother at such a young age created a bond that felt unbreakable, reinforced by years of public expectation that they would face royal life together. They laughed together, leaned on each other, and became symbols of a modern monarchy built on brotherhood. That is what makes the collapse of their relationship so painful to watch, and why the royal wedding that should have united the family instead became the moment everything quietly fractured. Long before the wedding day arrived, the emotional fault lines were already there. One brother had grown into the role of future king, trained from childhood to think institution first, stability above emotion, and long-term consequences over personal impulse. The other had always lived slightly outside that structure, more emotionally driven, more sensitive to criticism, and deeply protective of the woman he loved. When concerns were raised about speed, press pressure, and palace life, they were not heard as concern. They were heard as judgment. What made this period especially volatile was that the disagreements weren't happening in private family spaces alone. They were unfolding inside an ancient system that records everything, leaks constantly, and rarely forgives emotional missteps. Advisors, aides, and staff became intermediaries, and once that happened, trust began to erode. Conversations that should have remained between brothers instead passed through corridors, emails, and official channels. What might have been resolved quietly became magnified. As wedding preparations intensified, small issues took on outsized meaning. Decisions about ceremony details, household arrangements, and public messaging were no longer just logistical. They became symbols of respect, hierarchy, and autonomy. Every disagreement felt like proof of betrayal to one side and irresponsibility to the other. The more each tried to assert their position, the less they felt understood. On the wedding day itself, the world saw unity. The ceremony was elegant, emotional, and historic. Smiles were exchanged, duties fulfilled, traditions honored. But beneath the surface, something had already shifted. The warmth that once came naturally between the brothers had cooled into formality. The affection was there, but restrained. The closeness, carefully controlled. In the months that followed, the consequences became impossible to ignore. The joint charitable foundation split. Separate offices were established. Public appearances grew increasingly stiff. The once celebrated partnership dissolved not with a public announcement, but with silence. And silence, in royal terms, is often the loudest statement of all. What followed was not a single dramatic falling out, but a slow accumulation of distance. One brother felt abandoned at a moment when he needed protection and understanding. The other felt burdened by responsibility, frustrated by what he perceived as a refusal to accept the realities of royal life. Both believed they were acting out of love. Both felt misunderstood. The wedding became a psychological turning point. It marked the moment when loyalty to the institution and loyalty to each other could no longer comfortably coexist. From that point on, every interaction carried the weight of unresolved hurt. Every public gesture was scrutinized for meaning. Every silence interpreted as rejection. As years passed, the divide hardened. Interviews and personal revelations brought private pain into the global spotlight, making reconciliation even more difficult. Words spoken in vulnerability were received as attacks. Silence was read as coldness. The shared language they once had, of grief, humor, and mutual understanding, was replaced by guarded distance. What makes this story especially tragic is that there was no single villain, no single argument, no single betrayal. Instead, there was a collision between emotion and duty, between personal survival and institutional expectation. The wedding did not destroy the relationship on its own. It exposed everything that had already been cracking beneath the surface. Today, the bond that once defined them exists mostly in memory. The brotherhood that symbolized a new era of monarchy now stands as a reminder of how even the strongest relationships can fracture under pressure. The royal wedding will forever be remembered as a celebration of love, but for the two brothers at its center, it also marked the end of the chapter where they faced the world side by side. And perhaps the deepest tragedy is this: both walked away believing they had lost the other, when in truth, they had both lost the version of family they once depended on most.